All right, we now welcome on somebody we're very excited to have on today. He's one of soccer's most recognizable personalities. He was a member of the US 1994 World Cup team, and he's also the host of his own podcast called State of the Union. It is Alexi Lalas.
Wow, is that my cue to say hello? Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction. Incredible feeling and emotion and personality. I love it. Thank you. Good morning, guys. I'm coming to you from Los Angeles here. So I just woke up. My family is off to the races when it comes to Zoom education, which you guys, I'm sure, are used to, being the students that you are. But pleasure to be on the pod, and thank you for having me, and look forward to talking to both of you guys. Chuck and Curtis, straight out of Bethlehem.
Yes, sir. All right. So I guess start off. We know you had a long career in the U.S. national team. You also had a little time in Italy, and you also played in the MLS for quite a few years. And then after your MLS career, moved into management, and then now you're a broadcaster. What motivated you to move into broadcasting in the first place?
Needed a job because I got fired from the last one. So no, look, it had always been something that interested me. I had actually, many years before I officially retired, well, the second time I retired, I took a year off. I stepped aside, I think was what we called it. It was kind of a sabbatical type of year, and I ended up doing a lot of television. I did the Olympics in Sydney, so this was in 2000. I did the Olympics in Sydney. I did local broadcasting, actually, for the San Jose Earthquakes, and I did a television show for ESPN. And so I got that bug and got an idea of what it was. Then I went back and played, and as you mentioned, I continued on and did some front office stuff for a number of years. But this was something that always interested me, and and I'm really fortunate because I fell into something that, even 20 years on from when I last kicked a ball, I'm still involved in soccer, and I still get to talk about the game that I love. I'm passionate about it. I still make plenty of mistakes. I'm learning as we go. I still got a long way to go, but I was able to find something that I have as much, and even at times more, passion for, and something that excites me and challenges me as much, and at times even more than actually kicking the ball. And that's not easy, guys. I mean, when you've done it at a professional level, and that is your job, to have it just stop one day. A lot of players spend a lot of time kind of searching for that thing to replace the juice and the energy and the excitement of playing, and it's futile. You will never ever find something that is the exact same thing. Now, you may find something that excites you as much, and I'm lucky to have found that, but nothing will ever be the same. But you got to recognize that it's only a small part of your life, an actual playing career. And while it can be defining, one of the reasons why I'm talking to you today is because of what I did on the soccer field. It can't be everything. And you have to go on and find things in your life, like I said, that excite you and that you have a passion for. And if you're lucky, you get to be able to do them for a living.
Yeah. Like Chuck said, that obviously, like, you played, like, you were a player, and then you went into managing and then broadcasting later on. Like, it seems like you're always want to challenge yourself and do like new things and stuff like that. What do you like? Do you foresee yourself broadcasting for like a long period of time?
It's a good question. It's interesting. I was talking to my son the other day, and I told him about the trick of saying, "Hey, that's a good question," to people when they say it, because it makes them feel good. Whether it's a good question or not, you kind of do it, and you'll see it's people employ that little trick in a lot of different venues out there. But it is a good question, actually, because I just told you how much I love it and how immersed I am in it. And I don't know how I'm going to feel next year. Like you said, I bob and weave as much as I possibly can, and I like to excite myself. This is the longest I've done something in my life. But as I said before, I think I still got a whole lot more to do and give when it comes to the actual broadcast world. And you guys know the broadcast world is changing, and you have to evolve and change with it. Everybody's got a platform, everybody's got a microphone, everybody's got an opinion, and everybody's got a megaphone too, to broadcast that opinion. And what is a broadcast platform anymore? And there's so many different ways to get those voices out, but it also means that there's just so many different voices, and kind of cutting through that clutter is not easy. That's a long way to say that I want to keep doing it. And, you know, I tell people all the time in my business, you come across people, men and women, that are just passing through and that are using it kind of as a way station until something better comes along. This is for all sports. You'll see people that are just waiting for a head coaching job or a front office job or just something different. And this is just, they're biding their time. And you can get away with that for a little bit, but ultimately it will manifest itself in your performance. And you're not just cheating yourself, but I think you're cheating the viewer. And I don't want to do that. I want to be surrounded by people, and no matter what I do, that are junkies, that love it, that have a passion for it. And if there came a point where I didn't have that passion and I wasn't that type of junkie, I would look for something else.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, that's probably a reason why you're doing this podcast and other podcasts like it, because we're people like on the ground level who have a passion for the sport. So that's really
two reasons why I'm doing it. One, you guys had the attitude of going out there and, contacting me and just, just in general. I mean, that's important. I mean, you see this in all walks of life. I mean, politics, for example, people actually reaching out and having human contact and having a connection and putting out the effort to show that you want to talk to somebody, that you want to interact. That goes a long way. And you guys, I've done so many different podcasts, and I love this whole podcast world that has come about. In particular, the way that it is impacting the world of soccer and all of the different voices out there. And I don't care if it's the biggest podcast in the world or the smallest podcast in the world. It doesn't matter to me. If people want to talk about soccer, I'm there. I love it. And so this for me is fun. And look, I'm 50 years old, and I want to keep doing this for a long time, but I recognize that there's a whole younger generation of soccer broadcasters. And I know that's a very broad type of term, but people that want to be involved in the broadcast world, especially as it relates to soccer, that are coming along and that are going to do good things and are probably going to try to take my job, and they can pry it from my cold, dead hands. And hopefully it's many, many years from now. But I am truth be told, I am very, very bullish and happy and excited about the future because of, people like you that, see this as something that they possibly want to do, that are kind of DIYing it. And that's a good thing. That's how things change. That's how things evolve. So thank you for letting me be a part of this, this podcast and this thing that you guys are doing.
Yeah, that actually kind of comes to a question I had, which was like podcasts are growing a lot, and I feel like soccer is growing a lot in the US, even more so than before. So do you think podcasting is the next kind of way to consume soccer media, or do you see that in another outlet?
So you guys know, you live and you've grown up in the American sports culture, and we know that soccer isn't king, right? And that's reflected in the once again the traditional platforms and the ways in which we digest our sport. You have daily and certainly weekly type of shows that dissect and go into the minutia of American football and baseball and all the other sports. We don't have a lot of that when it comes to more traditional outlets, and so you got to look for different places. And back in the day, it was message boards and that kind of stuff. And even before that, it was fanzines and these types of things. And soccer will find a way. It always does. And American soccer in particular will find creative ways to expose itself and to grow. And I think that the podcast world has given us this platform that we lack in a more traditional sense when it comes to other sports. And what you're doing is basically you're giving voice. And that opinion and that debate and that constant back and forth that we associate with other sports and is vital to other sports. We just haven't had the outlets to do it from a soccer perspective. And so I think podcasting has come in and kind of given us that opportunity to have that. It's not just debate, it's the consistent and constant type of churning of debate that drives a lot of other sports. They're coming to get you.
Yeah, like I said earlier, like you played, managed, and then broadcast. You're missing one now. I mean, I know that DC they are looking for a new coach. Can you see yourself potentially coaching? I mean, I'm not saying go coach DC, but do you see yourself potentially being a coach in the next few years?
This is a question I get constantly, and it's to be expected. I'm awesome. So any team would love to have me and should be so lucky. They can't afford me, but they should be so lucky. Look, it goes back to the point I made before. I recognize that I'm incredibly fortunate. And I guess in the parlance of the day, I am incredibly privileged to be able to do what I do. And there are so many people out there that would kill or die to be able to have the same opportunity. And, I don't want to ever take that for granted. And I want to live up to that. And I want to do everything in my power to be the best at what I do. Still got a long way to go, like I said, but I've never had this burning desire to coach. Okay. I'm not saying I wouldn't be a great coach, but, but I haven't had that burning desire. Now, if that changed, and I felt different, Curtis, if I felt like this is something I have to do, I would do everything in my power to make that happen. I would leave no stone unturned, use every contact available that I had out there to try to do something like that. And ultimately, and this gets down to a point that's universal, I do the work. Okay. It's easy from your couch or from the bar to watch what happens on television when it comes to broadcasting. And to yell at the screen and say, I could do that, or that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. There's so much work that goes into it. I love that work. It is this iceberg type of theory where what you actually see on air is very, very small relative to all the work that's been done. However, if that top of that iceberg is going to be of any level of quality and any good, the rest of that stuff and that base has to be there. And that's where all the work goes in order to make it look like it's effortless, in order to make it look like that this is somebody just having a conversation. All of that stuff is calculated. All of that stuff is rehearsed. And all of that stuff is it doesn't always work out, but when it's cooking and when you really got it, it's because of all the work that you've done. And that applies to so many things in life, including coaching. You got to be able to, put in the time and recognize that despite a lifetime in the game, it doesn't necessarily mean that I mean, coaching is a very, very different job than being in the front office or being a player or being in broadcast or anything else for that matter. And so I wouldn't take it lightly. And I certainly wouldn't presume that I would know everything going in, but I would bring in all of my history and baggage and the good part about my history and baggage, and use that hopefully to my advantage and learn along the way, and the confidence that I have that I think that you need in order to be successful in life.
Yeah. So recently, the MLS has been producing a lot of talent. A lot of guys are moving over to Europe. And then, so kind of on top of what the MLS is currently doing, what do you think they can do to continue to build their relevance and credibility in the world of soccer?
Yeah, this is something that I think about and talk about a lot. And you said relevance, and that is such a huge word in soccer. And it's something that even before you guys were born, we've been trying to achieve. And, as I mentioned, the constant competition and reality of the country and culture in which we are trying to achieve this in, with all the history of other sports, makes it difficult. However, I think that you're seeing something right now, which is a change of perception and kind of an affirmation of what I have believed, and I think a lot of people believe, but just has not been out there. And that is that there's a lot of talent when it comes to the US. Okay. Undeniable talent. And I know it's fashionable nowadays to kind of crap on the American soccer system and what we aren't and what we haven't done. And we need to, tear it all down and start anew. But we've done some pretty good things, especially in a very short period of time. And, we kick ourselves for what we haven't done or what we aren't. And oftentimes I think it's important to also pat ourselves on the back, not rest on our laurels, but pat ourselves on the back for how far we have come as a soccer playing nation. So, when I look at how to achieve more relevance, it's chipping away. It's every single year. You mentioned the players. We're right now in this incredible world where we have American players. And when we say American players, we usually equate it with the U.S. men's national team. So players that can play for the U.S. men's national team. We got U.S. men's national team eligible players playing for Barcelona, Juventus, Dortmund, Chelsea, RB Leipzig, just these Champions League type of teams, and in some cases these super clubs of the world. And that's a great little feather in our cap, because to your point, that creates relevance. That means that, and credibility, to be quite honest with you, and it changes perceptions and attitudes, not just of the rest of the world, but even internally, the way that we look at ourselves, because we are notorious, as you guys know, when it comes to American soccer, for being incredibly sensitive and incredibly, and we have this legendary inferiority complex when it comes to how we view ourselves. We don't need to apologize, okay? We are different, and I think we need to be proud of the fact that we at times do things differently. But when it comes to the talent that we have, I think it can play against anybody. Okay. And I think the rest of the world is starting to catch up to what we have known for a long time, and that there is a lot of talent right now that can play in the quote unquote biggest stages out there. But then the domestic part is a whole different part of the equation, which is equally important. You need to show people that there is a pathway, and that if they want to play domestically, there are opportunities. And for young boys and girls, for that matter, when it comes to the men's league and the women's league, you have to show that this is a viable option for them to be professional players, and that there is going to be opportunity, there is going to be playing time, and that this, to quote the commissioner of Major League Soccer, Don Garber, that this is a league of choice, not just a league of choice for people coming from the outside in, but people starting on the inside looking at it also as a league of choice.
Mm-hmm. So kind of backing up to what you said in the beginning about the relevancy, and that it's something that MLS has always tried to have from the start, and you were part of the MLS from the very start. So when you kind of moved to the MLS, you were playing in Italy at first. How did the MLS kind of bring you in, saying like, oh, were they kind of saying, oh, in a few years we're going to be the top league, or what was that whole their whole way to pitch you to come?
They didn't have to pitch me, because, and it's hard because if you weren't there, you don't know and it's not your fault. I mean, I'm just going to explain that the climate and the landscape was so completely different than today. Mm-hmm. We used to sit in the back of buses and on airplanes and in hotels. I'm talking about the U.S. men's national team, and talk about having a league of our own, talk about how great it would be. And so I think for my generation, much more so, it was, and not to get all corny about it, but it was a real sense of responsibility. So it was America. I mean, it was building something of our own that was going to last well beyond our careers. Hopefully, we thought, and we were cautiously optimistic that it was going to last well beyond our careers, and hopefully well beyond our lifetimes, and to be able to leave something like that. So, and I know that sounds a little bit corny, but it really was. It really was. It was our own. There was ownership taken. That meant when the call came a few years later after the '94 World Cup, it wasn't even I don't even remember questioning that this is something that's going to happen and something that I want to be a part of. And after all is said and done, that moment when the whistle blew in 1996, when a lot of the people that you guys or anybody else weren't even around, that remains one of the proudest moments of my life, to be able to say, because you don't get a lot of chances in life to be there from the start of something. And that whistle was the beginning of something that's lasted over the last 25 years and has created the most successful professional soccer league in not just the United States, but in the United States and Canada. And so that's something to be happy about, something to be proud about, something to continue to work on. But that was the mindset set back there. We're coming back out of a responsibility to our sport and I guess to our country.
Yeah. Like Chuck said earlier, the MLS is, I mean, they are producing a lot of top talents, and then they're going over to Europe and stuff. Which player would you say right now in the MLS are you most excited to see continue to develop, and who would most likely have a huge impact on the U.S. men's national team in the coming years?
So the impact on the national team is strange because, you know, we all try to figure out from our from our chairs and extrapolate it out and think, well, this player's here now, so he's going to be here now. And it doesn't always work out like that. I mean, look, Gio Reyna, guys, you know, he playing over in Dortmund. I looked at him even as, you know, even a year ago as a long-term type of project, as someone for 2026, okay, that next cycle. And yet, if Greg Berhalter were to have a camp right now and not call Gio Reyna, I mean, everybody's head would explode. That's how quickly he has jumped on the radar and made an impact. And so we still don't know what the national team looks like with Gio Reyna. We're basing it all off what's happening at Borussia Dortmund, which is, which is fine. You have someone like Brendan Aronson right now, who I think is off to a really interesting adventure. And, that's been really, in a good way, calculated as to where he's going. Obviously, going to Austria, which you could argue is a sideway, and even you could argue a backwards type of step from a just pure competition perspective. But he's going to the best team there, so he'll be surrounded by the best talent. Playing Champions League, obviously playing for Jesse Marsch with RB Salzburg over there. So an American who understands and, more importantly, respects American players, because American players still have to deal with a lack of understanding and therefore a lack of respect that comes from simply being American. And you got to overcome that. And that's nothing new. We've been doing that for years. And it's starting to change a little bit, but this is a nice place to go. It also represents a sale of a player, and a young player, a homegrown player, for a good chunk of money. And hopefully, it continues to set the market and continues to churn MLS being part of that international market for players and selling players. Doesn't have to be for ridiculous amounts of money, but constantly churning the talent that they have and selling them and making money and being part of that business. Now, they got to be careful that they don't just become viewed as a farmers league, as a farm team type of situation, or a developmental type of thing, in the way that let's say the Eredivisie over in Holland is looked at. But those are some things. I think it's great. Now, the interesting thing, and I was talking about this on my podcast this week, was all the young players that we are seeing playing right now and doing well, scoring goals, getting playing time, making our eyes wide. Would this have happened in normal circumstances? If this was 2019 and this wasn't the pandemic year and all the unprecedented type of change that has happened, are they specifically getting these opportunities because of 2020? And if that's the case, that's not necessarily a good thing, because normal times, quote unquote, normal times, they wouldn't be getting these opportunities. And we wouldn't know about them. And more importantly, the world wouldn't be watching and the world wouldn't be seeing. And that once again, that relevance and that credibility wouldn't be established. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that we've been producing talent for a while now. I just think that talent is finally being recognized and given opportunities.
What do you mean by the fact kind of that it's 2020? What you're saying, like, instead of 2019? So
the pandemic has posed challenges and obstacles unlike anything that we have ever seen. And so it is very different times. The way that coaches coach, the way that teams play, the strategy and the tactics that are employed are very different than they would be in a normal year. The amount of games, the games that come fast and furious, the lack of of fans in the stands, all of that stuff combined makes it a very surreal and as I said, incredibly different, apples and oranges type of difference to a normal type of situation. And look, there might be much more pressure and much more risk in a normal situation of playing these younger players. And so therefore, maybe 2020 has given coaches and teams and maybe even leagues like MLS much more courage to be able to do it. It's not even courage necessarily, because much less to lose, I guess, when it comes to these decisions to play some of these young players. And that's good. I mean, that's a silver lining type of thing for a crap year that's happened, that they are getting these opportunities. But it also brings up a potential problem in that in normal times, if those opportunities aren't there, why did a pandemic have to happen for the American talent to be seen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And I feel like too that like, yeah, it's kind of has, like, I don't know if it directly is correlated from the pandemic, but I feel like MLS teams are definitely pushing more towards playing younger players. Like we've had two of the guys we've had on, Cole Bassett and Gianluca Busio. They're both going to be top players that are going to Europe soon. And I feel like this year they've kind of really like broken out, probably because they have been given the opportunity to play. So.
Well, look, notwithstanding the fact that we've seen Frank de Boer in Atlanta be fired and Ben Olsen be fired, I think that there's a real desire to give people the benefit of the doubt in 20. And you will be let off is not quite the right phrase, but you will be forgiven much more for things that happen in 2020 because of just the surreal circumstances that you are having to deal with, and that lends itself to taking more risks and to doing some different things, because that the repercussions of something not going well are less this year than they would be in other years. I say it all the time. If you're going to fail, if you're going to lose, if you're going to do things that are unpopular and that are going to invite criticism, do it in 2020, because it won't have as dramatic an impact and an effect, and a negative one, as it would happen if it was done in normal times. And that's not to say that 2021 is going to necessarily automatically January 1st, 2021, and everything's going to change, everything's going to be great. We all know that. We hope it's better, but 2020 has provided incredible challenges on and off the field for everybody.
Yeah, it's a year to take risks and try new things, I guess. We started this podcast. So
there you go. Now, I'm not saying to your point, there's also within 2020 opportunities, and whether it's Cole or anybody else, hey, look, it doesn't matter how you get the opportunity, take it. A player gets injured, get in there. All right. A new coach comes in. We've seen a million different ways for you to get the opportunity. That door opens up. Okay. You get your foot in there and you make sure that when it closes, because it will close and it will close fast, that you are through that door and that you are in that position. Just find yourself in that position. And it's happened to all of us. At some point there was a time where I was fighting for a spot and I was just one of the guys, and somebody got hurt, or the coach needed something, or a player got suspended, or a million different things can happen. And that might be the moment, and you better be ready for that moment. And if 2020 is that moment, we're seeing some players step up and take it. And guess what? They're through that door now. We've seen how good they are. You can't go back. Okay. And that's great for them. Well, they can't go back. All right. The league may try to go back, but they've now established themselves, and now they've turned our heads and opened our eyes and said, man, these are some talented players. And now there's almost this responsibility, if and when we get back to a normal type of situation, to continue to at least play those players that we've seen already.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like, kind of to your point, the MLS has their foot in the door now recently in 2020. What do you think they can do to continue to develop and continue? Like, is there anything specifically they should change or do differently? Or,
well, you guys have seen, the massive change when it comes to the Development Academy and the disbanding of it from a USSF, United States Soccer Federation perspective, and that starting basically being taken over by MLS. I think that's really good for a couple of reasons. Number one is, you guys, look, if I ask you guys, and that includes, the people that are listening in here and your producers and everybody, what beautiful soccer is, we're going to get a different answer from all of you. Everybody's going to have a different idea of what beautiful soccer is. Okay. So one of the things that I think makes this the greatest country in the world, the United States, is our incredible diversity. It also means that presents a challenge to us, because we have all of these diverse types of thought of what the game is and how the game should be played. And we're trying to get 11 people on the field from a national team perspective to all play and buy into the same thing. And that's next to impossible. And I think it wastes time and resources. And so what I'm seeing right now is MLS teams kind of saying, you know what, we are going to create our own principles, our own ethos, and our own philosophy. And it might not work for this person or this area, but this is who we are, and we're not going to apologize for it. And over here, it might be completely different, and that's okay. That's a good thing, I think, that MLS is doing. Now, to your point, in a bigger picture, which comes to number 2, is look, MLS, like it or not, and they knew it from the moment that I stepped on the field back in 1996. They were going to be compared and contrasted with the rest of the world. Unlike any other sport or league in the United States, that compare and contrast doesn't happen with those other sports. It's always going to happen with soccer because it is these world games. And you got to measure up. At times MLS has, and at times MLS hasn't. And so the amount of money that you spend, the way that you go about your business, in that inevitable compare and contrast, how are you faring? And I'm not saying the money solves everything. It does change a lot of things, but there's been a gradual progression and growth, and it's been strategic, and I understand why, but we always kind of want things faster, and we love to spend other people's money or tell people how to spend their money when it comes to professional sports. And that's okay. But, I think, once again, the word relevance, having MLS be relevant going forward is going to be tied to a lot of the money that you spend, okay? The way and the continued way that these communities and these teams define themselves. And, you guys, I'm sure you watch the EPL, right? Well, the migration that happened to England, okay, that created the most popular league in the world, the EPL, that was born out of, Serie A was the place to be over in Italy, okay? And they killed the golden goose. There was plenty of corruption. I think they rested on their laurels. And ultimately, the European community opened up and the Bosman ruling happened, and this migration happened to England. Now, it didn't happen because of the weather or the food, okay? It happened because there were a lot of money and some really, really smart people that marketed and created a league that the world wanted to see, with narratives on and off the field, and great players, great coaches, great personalities, great stories. That can happen again. That can happen again to North America, because there's a lot of players that want to go there. And if they can make as much and maybe even more money, if they can be safe, they can get paid on time, they can have the quality of life for them and their family that North America provides for them, all of those different things. Now you're talking. Now you're creating something that is aspirational. Now you're creating something that the world wants to see.
Yeah. So do you have kind of a timeline then for when the MLS, do you think, could reach that level?
Well, I think 2020. I'm not saying it happens in 2026, but I think this ramp up to 2026, guys, is so great to have. And it will come and go. It's going to be, you snap your fingers and it will be 2026. And so we really have to be using it correctly and making sure that we're not wasting any opportunities or moments to build and be ready for that explosion that's going to happen in 2026. But the circus will come and leave town. But I think 2026 is I think it's a good date to, for example, people talk about the potential of incorporating Liga MX into MLS at some point. Maybe 2026 is a good date to point to and say, well, that's when we start to see this integration in with Mexican soccer. And you have a true North American type of league. All that kind of stuff. I think that would be really, really cool to see some of those stuff. When MLS is looked at in the same way that the EPL is, I mean, look, that's way on down the line. But you look at the way that it changed from Italy to England. It can happen much quicker than we think. But also, while we always want to be number one, and I know we obsess about that, especially when it comes to the American psyche, and I get that, and it's what drives us forward a lot of times, we also have to recognize that we will be one within a world that plays soccer. And that's okay too, to be within that group when we talk about great leagues of the world. Even that in and of itself would be a tremendous feat.
What would you say your take is on the MLS transitioning into a promotion relegation type of season? Like,
we're going promotion relegation. Awesome. Evergreen. I love it. I get asked this constantly because, there's a lot of people that feel that it's the lack of it is holding MLS back. There's a lot of people that feel that it is this silver bullet and that this is the magic elixir that solves all of our ills. And I'm not saying that you do. I think you recognize that while interesting, it's you don't just flick a switch and automatically everything's great. As I say each and every time, I love promotion relegation. I actually lived the power of, well, in this case, the threat of relegation when I was in Italy, and I went through that emotional roller coaster, and the competitive side of it and the entertaining side of it. I love it. It provides moments and pressure and memorable situations and circumstances that are unique, and I have no problem with it. I love watching it. However, I don't need it to enjoy my soccer. And I absolutely don't think that it should be mandated on anybody, including Major League Soccer. Major League Soccer made its decision that in a situation that is already fraught with risk, even in 2020, investing in soccer is not for the faint of heart, that they decided that this was something that they were going to do to mitigate some of that risk. And it made it more attractive to owners and potential owners. So, I don't see that changing anytime soon from an MLS perspective, but I always say, build a better mousetrap. If you truly believe that promotion relegation is something that the customer wants and that the market is craving and that the sport needs in order to truly succeed and to evolve, then there's nothing stopping you from creating it right now. You can have multiple leagues and multiple teams playing in a promotion relegation type of system. Now, is it the same type of stringent type of pyramid that exists over in Europe? No, not necessarily. And look, we might even see MLS get to a point where there's MLS 1 and MLS 2. But I know for a lot of people out there that want promotion relegation, that's a bastardized type of promotion relegation. That's not real authentic promotion relegation. And not to mention, why would an MLS owner agree to be in MLS 2? You want to be in MLS 1. You want to be in that first division type of league, and there's a benefit and value to being in that. But there's nothing stopping multiple Division 1 sanctioned professional leagues. And if you want to have multiple leagues that play in a promotion relegation type of situation where people going up and down, there's nothing stopping anybody from doing that. And if truly people believe that that's what they want and that the customer wants that type of product, then it should go great. And by the way, I will support anybody that is trying to create that better mousetrap. Okay, I can support MLS, and I can support anybody that believes that they want to do that, and they want to compete, and they want to provide an alternate version of soccer if they truly believe that that's what's going to happen. I will support them 100%.
Yeah. From a fan's perspective too, I think my view on it is I think promotion relegation definitely helps build a better following of the league, because right now I feel like the MLS, especially in the United States, it's kind of has a looser following compared to the likes of like the NFL or the NBA, and then especially to the EPL or Bundesliga. So I kind of feel like because in promotion relegation every game matters, kind of what you were saying before. Like every game will have effect on somebody. So I feel like that then people kind of may feel more attached because they want to see their team succeed and do well and not move down to the second division or anywhere else. So I feel like from that perspective, it could be good to start building a wider fan base, or to see a team move up through from the lower division up to the top,
Sure. So what's your pitch then to an MLS owner who has paid, well, at this point, $350 million just for the expansion team, and then probably dumped another $250 million when it comes to a stadium, then some more money when it comes to a training facility. What's your pitch to them as to why he or she that is bought into this league should accept promotion relegation and that additional risk of not even being in that first division if you have a year where it doesn't go well? Because at some point, if MLS is involved, you have to convince these men and women that this is what is good for them, okay, and their investment when it comes to the sport and in the form of the team that they own.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that point, and I feel like, because obviously, like, at the end of the day, it's a business. You want to be making money, and in the short term, if you're not in the top tier, you're not going to be making the money. So from that perspective, I guess it is tough. I feel like it probably would be tough to pitch it, but I kind of would pitch it in more of a long-term perspective, saying it's, yes, you'll start out at the bottom, or yes, you'll be in the second division, revenues and whatnot won't be as high, but you could have the potential, if you do good business, produce good talent, invest in your youth, to eventually move up to the top and compete with the top teams and have that generate that amount of revenue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it happening anytime soon from an MLS perspective, which is why I say, the quickest course may be actually producing and creating an alternative that people look at and say, hey, that's something that I prefer. And that ultimately is competition. Is really what we're talking about here is competition, and even in the business world, providing competition is good. And maybe MLS sees that competition and changes, or they ramp up their game. Look, competition is good on the field and off the field, because it forces people to step it up. And I think one of the criticisms of a league like MLS that doesn't have promotion relegation is that it lets people off the hook, lets owners and teams off the hook for when they are poor. And I get that. I completely understand that. But I also look at, like you said, the business side of it and the reasons why they were attracted in the first place to something like MLS, because all these people are billionaires, and they could go and buy a team over in wherever, somewhere in Europe, and be involved in promotion relegation, if that's what they wanted. But I think there's also, when it comes to ownership, a desire to create something unique that's going to last in their community. And with the threat, and I know it's I don't know if that's the best word, but the threat of possible relegation and losing that Division I type of not sanction, but just label. Yeah, that's that can scare people, but sometimes it's good to scare people.
All right, so kind of moving on now from the MLS into more of the U.S. men's soccer in general. So clearly, like, since 2018, the U.S. didn't make the World Cup in 2018. It was terrible for just soccer in general. How do you think the U.S. soccer has reacted to that? Like, how would you rate it? And what do you think still needs to be improved upon?
So it was, without a doubt, the darkest moment in, I think, American soccer history, to be quite honest. I mean, this is not, look, we know the women are incredible, and they continue to provide a light, believe me, but it wasn't just about the men's program. All right. This permeated and brought down just a lot of, not just the soccer community, but everyone that kind of dips their foot in every once in a while. They pointed at this, and it's amazing the amount of much more mainstream type of sports broadcasts that grabbed onto it, because we're supposed to qualify for the World Cup, and we should, and we have every year since 1990 done that. And so this was, first off, it was an incredible lost opportunity, an undeniable failure, an epic failure. and one that, look, it as I said, it had all these tentacles. The president of the United States Soccer Federation was changed because of it. All of these different repercussions happened because we lost that game and we didn't qualify for the World Cup. And who knows? Was it the wake up that we needed? Nah, maybe, but it still would have been better to actually be there. We gain more from being at a World Cup than being reminded that there's a possibility we can't be there, to be quite honest with you. And so there's that lost opportunity of being able to go to a World Cup for that summer. We talked earlier about some of these players. It's really interesting to me to go from the saddest and lowest point, arguably, but I do think it is, to a moment right now where I'm hard pressed to think of a more confident and optimistic time when it comes to looking at some of this talent that we're talking about right now, which is amazing because it's not that long ago and it's changed. So I think that we're in a very good moment right now, and maybe it's viewed as so good because of how bad the moment was back in 2017 when we failed in that game and then didn't qualify for the 2018 World Cup. But look, it's part of our history now. I do think that it made us re-examine or even just examine ourselves and look internally. I do think that some of the changes that were made in the structure over at the United States Soccer Federation, guys like Ernie Stewart, Brian McBride, and now obviously the coach of Greg Berhalter, some of those changes were direct responses to what people felt was a program that had lost its way. I don't know if we're back on the right direction, but it seems like, and it feels like that we are. But look, until we qualify for another World Cup, there's always going to be that, and even qualifying for a World Cup, while we'll celebrate it because we didn't do it last time from a men's perspective, it should be expected. That's what we should do in CONCACAF, right? We're the United States in CONCACAF. We should find a way to be one of the 3 or 4 teams that comes out of CONCACAF to go to a World Cup. So it sucked. It sucked. I think back to that night, and it was a surreal experience because you didn't think that could happen, and yet there we were, and we weren't going to the World Cup.
Yeah, like you said earlier, like the U.S. has a lot of great talent now, like a lot of guys playing in Europe and stuff like that. If you were Greg Berhalter and you had a World Cup qualifying match, just say like tomorrow, who would you put in your starting 11?
Oh, geez. Okay, so right now, for better or worse, Josie Altidore is up top. Okay, and this is provided he's healthy, but let's just say that he's healthy. And I'm just assuming people are healthy right now. Mm-hmm. So this is I'm going to do what I think that Greg Berhalter has available to. All right, because I might do some things differently, but right now I think the starting 11 for Greg Berhalter is, let's say, Josie up top. The 3 under him would be, let's say, Gio Reyna, Pulisic, and like Jordan Morris, maybe. Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Dest at either right or left back. I don't know who's going to play left back. I'd like to have Dest play right back, but I don't know. And then you got, then we're talking about like Brooks and what's his name over in at Bayern Munich? Is potential, but he's still young.
Richards?
Yeah, Richards. I mean, he's still young. He's still getting there, and who's to say that he's any better than a Walker Zimmerman or something like that? I know that's sacrilege. I couldn't, but let's be honest. A lot of these players we haven't seen in the national team, and then the goalkeeper is really interesting because. I love Zach Steffen, and I think he's a good goalkeeper, but for a goalkeeper in particular, you got to be playing. But I also have a part of me that says, because of the specific way that Greg Berhalter wants to play, playing out of the back, I want somebody who's really comfortable and adept and confident and has that beautiful arrogance to be able to play out of the back. And I think Zach Steffen has that. Gets him into trouble every once in a while, but it's kind of something you have to live with. Otherwise, it would be, I mean, look, you got the Matt Turners of the world, or Brad Guzan and that type of stuff. So, those are the questions that I have. The one big question mark that I do have, though, is there a way to find a place for Darlington Nagbe back into the national team? Because I just think that he is so good, and he doesn't want to play for the national team. And I get it. And you don't want to beg somebody, but part of the job of Brian McBride and Ernie Stewart and Greg Berhalter is to pitch and to sell the situation, and to possibly, first off, you got to get the players that you think are going to be the best collection of players together. And I think that in the way that this team is trying to play, someone like Darlington Nagbe could really, really help. So I guess we're missing
left back.
I don't know. who do we have? I mean, you could.
There's Anthony Robinson at.
Yeah, I know. I've just seen all of these things, and this is where I think we should also, a word of caution. I always say that form is fallacy. Just because somebody plays at a big club doesn't mean that they should start with the national team, or if they start for the national team, that they will be any better than somebody who plays for a smaller or lesser known club. It's not about the best players. It's about the best collection of players. And that's what Greg Berhalter has to do. And in particular, with what Greg Berhalter is trying to do, he has to be very, very specific and strategic about the types of players that he gets. And there's nothing that scares America and in the American soccer community more than unrealized or ignored or shunned recognized talent. But I'm telling you right now that there may be some very good players, maybe even great players, that just don't fit. And that's okay. That's not something to fear. Okay. This goes back to my point of how difficult it is in a country as diverse and with as much diversity of thought when it comes to the game, about putting 11 players on the field that all have a collective and agreed upon way of playing. It's very difficult. So I'll be interested to see ultimately who that happens. But the fact that we have some options out there, that's a good thing. There's a lot of talent out there. It's just putting those pieces together in the correct way.
Yeah.
Have you found like a left back yet, or are you just gonna leave that spot open and hope for the best?
You could fit in there, Curtis.
Are you there? Is that your spot?
Yeah, sure. I'll play there.
Are you left-footed?
No.
So can't we, for the love of God, can't we just get a left-footed player? I mean, is there just one that's really, really good, that's left-footed, so we don't have to constantly put, Dest over there and have people playing over on the side? My country for like a Jeff Agus or something like that. Oh my, anyway. Yeah, I mean, those are the questions. And look, this is all theory. This is because, and another thing about 2020 is that we haven't seen this team progress. So I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't think this is going to happen, but Gio Reyna could step on the field for the U.S. men's national team and be crap. Now, I don't think it's going to happen, but you change circumstances and surroundings, and strange things can happen. And it wouldn't mean that he's not a great player. It just might mean that this isn't the time, or ultimately this isn't the type of team for him. And that's okay. I know people say, "Oh, we got to find a way. We got to find a way to fit great players in." Not necessarily.
Yeah. So I mean, clearly, like, there's a lot of young players in the mix in this lineup, and there's a lot of hype around them. I just kind of feel that this team, a lot of these guys haven't really played together. They haven't played in like a unified system. Mm-hmm. So what is most important to ensure that, like, from the coach? Like, what do you want to see out of Greg Berhalter to ensure that these guys are playing together as a team and like it's like stylistically similar, I guess.
Right. So first off, Greg Berhalter isn't just sitting around, eating ice cream and watching, the Sopranos marathon or something like that. Okay. He if he's doing his job, and I know he is, he's keeping in contact with as many players as possible. And it's even more important now because he has to run kind of virtual sessions with them, but recognize that their responsibilities with their clubs right now, and just constantly be feeding them ideas and talking to them, even if it's just analyzing the way that they played for their club team on the weekend. That stuff is going on. I also think that Greg Berhalter and his staff are probably having a lot of conversations as to, given the current circumstances, have we bitten off more than we can chew? In that we wanted to do something novel and different, and I love that. We unfortunately in American soccer, a lot of times we wing things, and I want people to have a plan. It might be a flawed plan the way that I look at it. I might believe it's a flawed plan, but I would rather have someone have a flawed plan than no plan at all. And we wing so much in American soccer, and I don't want that. And Greg Berhalter has had and continues to have a plan. It's expansive. It is incredibly challenging. And it is very different than anything has been done in the past. He might come to the realization that given the lack of time that he's going to have with this team, he may have to alter that. He may have to scale back. He may have to become more pragmatic in terms of his approach. And if that's the case, that's okay. Or he might say, you know what, come hell or high water, we're going to figure out a way to do this. And even if I don't have the players with me and on the field, I'm going to find a way to get them, and I'm going to trust that they get it so that they'll be able to implement it on the field and let the chips fall where they may. I don't know what he's going to do, but I mean, the reality, guys, is we're not going to see this team until we won't see the full team probably until next summer. There's talk about these November friendlies that are coming up, maybe in Europe. We don't know who's going to be involved. And once again, that's not the full team, and so therefore it's not really seeing the team. It's better than nothing, and listen, we'll all watch if it happens, by the way. So we just don't know, and it's too bad, because I think he set out a really bold type of approach, and it got derailed, as a lot of things did, because of 2020.
Yeah, on Twitter we saw that you tweeted that you wanted the World Cup to be moved. Well, you think it should be moved to 2023. What is your reasoning behind that?
So we've kicked the can down the road for a lot of these things. I mean, look, we've postponed the Euros, the Olympics. We've pushed back qualifying. We've Copa Americas, Gold Cups, all the different things out there that we have adjusted or postponed or just pushed further on down the line, which is understandable given the circumstances in 2020. But that will come back to roost in that there is going to be incredible congestion. And, when I think about the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, rather than force it through this time of congestion, maybe you say, you know what, let's have a little bit of a relief valve with this thing looming in 2020 and trying to get everything done over in the next couple of years here, when we don't know what the next couple of years are going to look like. Maybe you say, all right, look, let's just put it off a year. And so it happens, we know that right now it's scheduled to happen in November, December of 2022 in Qatar. You say, no, it's going to happen in November, December of 2023 in Qatar. Now, there are no ideal or perfect answers to any of this. This is just making the best of a crap situation, right? And trying to do the best in crap circumstances. So, for example, you put it in 2023, what are the challenges that then arise? Well, you got the Women's World Cup that summer, and now a Men's World Cup in November and December. Can that still happen? Yes. Does it take away from one or the other? Possibly. Or you look at it as, hey, this is a hell of a year for soccer. And you have two of the biggest events when it comes to FIFA. You alleviate some of that pressure that inevitably is going to be there in terms of congestion, and you anticipate and you give yourself a little bit more breathing room when it comes to the unknown that exists right now with 2021, where we all think it's just going to be hunky-dory and everything's going to be fine. And the reality is we don't know. We hope, but we don't know. And so that was the reasoning behind it. Look, I think the ship has sailed. I think it's going to happen in 2022, but it would be interesting if they did consider something like that. The suggestion probably can't come from an American or from America, because anything that comes from us can't possibly be a good idea. So it probably has to come from elsewhere when it comes to something like that. But that was my thinking. I think about things, I say things, people agree, people disagree. It's kind of how it works.
Yeah, especially from the U.S. team's perspective, I think that it would be beneficial because it gives them much more time to develop and play together and kind of establish their own way of playing. But so like going into whenever it is the World Cup, who is the player you're most excited to see perform and play? And who do you like? It's necessarily may not be the best, but who are you just most excited to see play and develop?
From a U.S. perspective or just in
Yeah,
general?
no, from the U.S. perspective, like on the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Tyler Adams is a special player. I think that the Pulisics and the Weston McKennies will take a lot of that bandwidth and rightfully so. But I think when all is said and done, from a competitive side, that Tyler Adams, if he stays healthy, and I hope he does, could be the key to that team functioning. He does a lot of stuff that isn't easily seen, isn't sexy, but is key. I think he's a leader, and I think that seeing him get his opportunity, and it's not just him, it's all these guys. I mean, if I was part of that group and part of that generation that we're talking right now, I'd be licking my chops. We talked about the failure of not qualifying for 2018. I'd be saying, you know what? Not on my watch. This is a great opportunity, okay? Because we're going to be looked at as heroes, okay? Just qualifying, we're already going to have done more than the previous team did. And then if we do well in a World Cup, I'd be looking at this as, man, this is how we define our generation and separate our generation from that previous one. And that would be a good thing. So I'm really interested to see ultimately how he continues to develop, how long he stays, or if he stays where he is right now. I mean, it's a great team. He's making plenty of money. He's obviously an important component of RB Leipzig, but does he have higher aspirations? And are there others that are kicking the tires and saying, hey, this might be interesting? I mean, Weston McKennie went to Juventus. I think that Tyler Adams is a better player.
Like I said earlier, you've done everything, played, managed, and then broadcast, and I'm still waiting to see you coach and stuff like that. Have you ever been in a conversation for the coach for the U.S. men's national team? No,
I've never been in a conversation for that. Look, there's a lot of guys out there, and I know that Greg Berhalter at times takes a lot of crap and gets criticism. It comes with the job. Everybody understands that. Greg understands that. Everybody understands that. But we were talking earlier about the credibility of the American soccer player has been enhanced and increases and has improved. I also think that when it comes to American coaches, that there's a lot of quality out there that doesn't get looked at or gets devalued simply by the fact that they are American coaches. For what Jesse Marsh has done, and I love Jesse, okay? He was given an opportunity and a pathway that's unique to him because of his Red Bull association. He could go on, and I think he's doing great things, and he's a great coach, but it's a Peter Vermes or any other of these coaches that we have out there, if given the same, Caleb Porter, if given the same type of opportunities and pathways, I think could be as successful and if not more successful. All right. So, and I think Jesse would say the same thing, that there is underappreciated and undervalued coaching quality out there when it comes to the American and the domestically developed coaches that we have over here. And while I wouldn't presume to be able to do their job, I probably could fake it for a while.
All right. So kind of backing up, when we were talking before, we were missing a left back for the team.
Mm-hmm.
And a player that came to my mind, not that's a U.S. player, but a CONCACAF player, Alphonso Davies, who's emerged as one of the best left backs in the game. Do you think he's the best player currently in CONCACAF?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think that for any number of reasons, and not for, that he's playing for Bayern Munich, obviously that opens everybody's eyes, and that in and of itself is an incredible accomplishment and carries wonderful value. But I mean, look, this is first off a left back who was not trained as a left back, who adjusted in the moment, and not just adjusted and fit in and was comfortable, but in the span of a year became arguably the best left back in the world. I mean, that's awesome. That's awesome. And how he did it, I think, is as important, because, you know, everybody talks about his speed. Absolutely. You know, that is a huge component and skill and tool that he has, and that, but he's honed it. He has harnessed it in a way that shows, you know, an incredible intelligence in terms of, you know, where he, you know, the runs that he chooses, the times that he chooses to go forward, the times that he doesn't choose to go forward, the angles that he takes in terms of how he approaches defending. You know, that he plays for Bayern Munich enables him to be a much more attacking left back than if he played for a middle or lower level type of team, and that benefits him. But I don't think he gets enough credit for the defensive work that he does. And it's not just simply relying on speed. It's harnessing that speed and using it intelligently. And for a young player and an inexperienced player, that's awesome. I just love watching him. And I think it's a wonderful feather in the cap for obviously Vancouver, for MLS, for Canadian soccer. And I'm just sorry that he's not playing for the US.
Nah,
Yeah.
he like him and I, like, we're pretty good friends. He told me one time that, like, if he was offered to play for the US, like, he 100% would, like, without a doubt.
No, I know. I mean, who wouldn't? We're awesome. I mean, look, and here's another example. I think that there are a lot more Alphonso Davies out there that, you know, they just need a chance. They just need to be given an opportunity. I'm so happy for him. I mean, look, his life is forever changed. And you know as well as I do, and people that have followed understand the story, and the story is just amazing. And you know, it's the human spirit, it's serendipity, it's belief, it's support, it's all of those different things. And then it's just a really interesting and intelligent and you know, huge personality of a person that you want to like him, and you do. And that's great. And even, I guess the best compliment I could pay is that to him is that even if he wasn't a good soccer player, I'd still want to hang out with him. You know, I mean, and
For sure.
So he seems like a genuine, a good person that is taking this all in stride. And, you know, his life, none of us can relate to what he's going through right now. And it must be wonderful. And he's got so much more to give. And so I really look forward to seeing him grow and evolve and see where his, not just his career path goes, but where he goes in life, because I think he'll be a prominent part of the way we think about the game for a long time to come, both on and off the field.
Yeah. He just has very down to earth personality. Like, if you met him, you wouldn't really know that he was playing left back for Bayern Munich. So it's cool to see how he's stayed humble for like how he is now. But
that'll change. That'll change.
But so I would say he's emerged probably as the best player Canada has probably ever produced in a short amount of time. Who, in your opinion, who do you think is the best player that the US has produced so far?
Well, I think the most impactful player the US has ever produced is Mia Hamm. From a men's perspective, I think it's got to be Landon Donovan. I don't think anybody, you know, the debate often is between Landon Donovan and a Clint Dempsey. And I always say that, you know, if I was in a bar fight, I want Clint Dempsey. If I was in a World Cup game, I want Landon Donovan. You know, and they're very, very different people, obviously, and very, very different players. And Clint's an incredible player. But I still think that Landon Donovan's the greatest male American soccer player ever to play. the impact that someone like Mia Hamm had, both, and not just on women's soccer, but just on soccer in general, is undeniable. And for some people that maybe weren't living through that whole '90s thing, and the way that they fundamentally changed the way we look at not just women's soccer players and women's soccer, but the way that we look at American soccer. And a lot of that is, this reluctant star that was Mia Hamm, and the association with Nike and the Jordan commercials and all the different stuff that went on. That mainstream relevance was really, really important to the growth and the evolution of our sport.
Do you think Pulisic would have a better overall career than Lyndon Donovan by the time he's done playing?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to stay healthy, and we all know about his injury concerns, and it is a concern. And I'm knocking on wood here that he's healthy, because when he is, yeah, I mean, if he continues on, he can definitely surpass Landon Donovan. Now, impact on American soccer, that's a different type of question. But just when you're comparing careers, I guess, I mean, he's still got a long way to go. But the international component of it is important. And his only international experience when it comes to the full national team is not qualifying for the World Cup. So that part of the compare and contrast, that does have an impact. And so this next cycle, and obviously the next couple of cycles, hopefully he does something to, vanquish what happened in 2017. But yeah, I mean, he's just so decisive and forward thinking when he gets on the ball, the likes of which, and very, very different than Landon. Landon was much better in open space types of things. I think Christian is a whole lot better when things get crowded. I mean, look, he can do things out wide, but I think his one-on-one ability is better than Landon's. Landon was more of a slasher, but both just incredible talents. And I love watching Christian right now. Like I said, I just hope he stays healthy, because I always say that staying healthy is a skill, and it is a talent, and it's one that you either have or you don't, or you acquire it over time. And he has yet to show that he has it. And it sucks, because we want as much of him as we possibly can, as I'm sure Chelsea does. And hopefully we get to a point where there is a consistency and he understands how his body works. But, he wouldn't also, and I'm not going to wood, I hope this doesn't happen, but if he were to just flare out or peter out when it comes to playing or impact, he wouldn't be the first player to have that happen and burst on the scene and provide all of this hope and then not necessarily live up to it.
Yeah. Definitely is a lot to be excited about coming in the future. All right. I think we're just about done here. We just have a few fan questions.
Okay.
We want to get answers. Just a couple. First one's from our good friend at Evan Larimer. He wants to know which former U.S. national team player that you have played with would best fit the current U.S. squad.
All right. So Tab Ramos is the best player that I ever played with. I think that he was a man out of time. He was slumming it with us when he played with us back in the 90s. That's how good he was. Had he been born 20 years later, he would be viewed as, the Pulisic and the Gio Reynas and the, these types of incredibly talented and skillful and creative players that just happen to be American. So, I think that someone like Greg Berhalter, with his adherence to possession, could really benefit. I mean, even back in the day when I was playing, Tab was our outlet. When we were in trouble and we needed someone to hold the ball up, to relieve some pressure for us, and that could get out even with multiple players on him, either dribble out and find a way to relieve that pressure or take the foul because of his quickness and speed. I mean, his first two steps were insane, and his low center of gravity was insane. So that's a type of player that I almost am sad that he was born when he was born, in that I would have loved for him to have been exposed to a whole new generation, and to be playing at this time. I think there would be a much greater appreciation for how good he was.
All right. This next question is from Reddit, Mint Jack 22. What needs to happen for you to grow your hair back out?
I'm just trying to keep the hair I have left, man. I mean, I know never has so much been done with a modicum of talent and, some hair care products over the years. Yeah. Hair has featured prominently in my life over the years. I get a lot of hair questions. And look, for people that think that it's easy, it requires incredible amount of attention to detail and talent and work to look like that you just rolled out of bed on a consistent basis. And I did it for about a decade there back in the 90s. And I wish that I could just continue to grow it out, but it's not a concession. Especially when I started into front offices and kind of made that transition from the player, I kind of changed the costume. I've always considered myself a performer and an entertainer. And when you say that, sometimes people cringe because they think that you don't take what you do seriously, or you're not competitive or something like that. And that's not the case at all. I take it very seriously. And I am incredibly competitive, but I recognize that I'm going in front of people, whether it's on a field in front of people playing, whether it's on a stage, or whether it's on camera or something like that. And you have your costume, you perform, in my case on television. How I say things is as important as what I say. And there is that performance aspect of it. And I recognized from an early age that persona and that character that I was playing, how it could impact how people perceive me and how it could benefit. And I wanted people to notice. And crazy hair is a good way, especially in a game that doesn't have helmets and you're not covered up. But I also recognized that character and that performance and that costume needed to change as I grew up, and just as I evolved.
So this is another question kind of going off what you're saying about the entertainer, being an entertainer. This is from Ank's Child on Reddit. He was saying there's a game back in San Jose a while ago where every time you touch the ball, you would start doing fancy little dances or dribbles on the back line, which really riled up the crowd. And he was wondering if you remembered this moment, and said that some of the fans were pissed about it, but others, like himself, thought it was really funny. And he said that his respect for you grew that day, and he recognized that it was just all entertainment and was totally playing to the opposing crowd. But
yeah, so I don't care if the crowd is 100,000 people screaming for you or screaming against you. What I don't want them to do is not care. I have and I've always had a kind of punk ethos in that even if you're spitting and throwing stuff on, at least there's a reaction, and I crave and need and seek out that reaction. And I guess that attention, which makes me, egotistical narcissist, I guess. And I'm sure that there's some doctors out there that could diagnose it even more. But I don't apologize for the fact that I am, as I said, a performer and an entertainer. In that instance, it was a recognition that, that breaking that wall, in that I hear everything that people are saying. I hear you booing me, and so that was a nod to them. I guess. And look, I'm certainly not one that is going to perform any types of tricks when it comes to one-on-one ability. That was not my forte. So as a center back, getting the ball when you have a little bit more time and space, it's a little easier to do those things. But I enjoy poking people. Okay, I enjoy riling people up, whether it's on the field or in the studio. That's in a good way, not in a malicious way or anything like that. And for someone like the person that asked this question, it resonated, and there was a connection and a knowledge, and maybe even a begrudging respect that happened like that. Those are the types of athletes and entertainers that I want to watch. Okay. Big personality. I love big personality. I love ego. I don't think ego is a problem. I think it can be harnessed. That beautiful arrogance that stars have and that entertainers have. I love that, and I don't see that as a problem. You gotta maintain it, and you have to curtail it, and you can't let it become, especially when it comes to sports, you can't let the show be everything and not provide. That's like someone like Zlatan is just amazing, because he brings it, but he brings it with a over the top type of personality, and as I said, a beautiful arrogance that is just chef's kiss, just wonderful. And people love him, hate him, but even the people that hate him love him, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah.
All right, Alexi, thanks for coming on the show today. We really appreciate having you, and you're welcome back anytime. So thanks.
Well, thank you guys. I truly appreciate it.